You ready?
I'm ready whenever you are, Jared.
All righty. Let's do it.
Hey, welcome back. Process, preparation, performance. I'm Duke, he's Simmons, and it's like 17 degrees below zero outside JR. It does not feel like baseball season whatsoever, but I got my baseball hat on for the little youth team that my son's involved with. So we're supporting baseball today. Everything baseball. We got coaches from around the state. I don't know how many state titles are on this podcast panel here, but it's a stupid, ridiculous amount. Um, there's literally probably 8 inches of snow outside my window right now. It's snowing actively. I think if you go outside, you get frostbite. And spring sports are starting in like 2 weeks. We're supposed to be outside playing baseball, a season that we didn't get a year ago because of COVID, and we're going to dive into some of that. But today, all things baseball. I want to thank everybody for coming. JR, I'm going to let you kind of introduce who we have here today. But before we get there, JR, how are you riding your bike in this kind of weather? I mean, everybody knows you're an avid bike rider, like 3,000 miles last year. What are you doing?
Well, for everybody that does know, and for these guys that don't, I've got this virtual bike trainer now that I can hook everything up to. So I rode before I came down to the podcast, rode 15 miles somewhere over in England. So I'm up to 480 miles since January 1st, and I'm on a goal to do 3,500-ish this year. I'll get it 100%. So
That's crazy.
I'm starting to get sick of riding in a room. That's for sure. Even though it's really cool, it's getting a little bit depressing. So hopefully 6 more weeks, maybe I can get outside or go somewhere to where I can get outside. But yeah, it's been an experience for sure.
Well, it inspired me. I mean, I'm riding my bike now.
You are.
I'm riding my bike, and it's been a little bit crazy. I've had to ask some questions about a few things, but I'm riding my bike. I'm using that same app that you talked about. They don't sponsor this, so we're not going to give them any kind of shameless plug whatsoever. They can fend for themselves. They've got enough money. But thank you for that, because I certainly can't get outside and do a lot of things. But
Yeah.
JR, who do we have here today?
We've got, and I'll go on record as saying this, we've got the best of the best here in the state of Missouri. Talked to Brian Ash, and I said, can we get all these guys on the podcast at one time? And he goes, yeah, let's try to do this. And we have some fantastic baseball coaches here in Missouri. And what I'll do here, I'll just introduce everybody, and then they can talk about themselves a little bit. So I'll just go in the order it is on my screen. If we went with the best looking, I don't know who I'd pick here, but I'm gonna start. Coach Wilson's smiling.
Laz, you're up, buddy.
Yeah. Got your hair perfect. So I'll start with Coach Perkins. Coach Perkins, go ahead and intro yourself here for everybody.
Hey, I'm Tony Perkins. I'm at Francis Howell. I've been a Howell for, over 30 years, something like that. So I'm getting old, but still plugging away, still loving it.
Coach Towe.
Dustin Darby, Rockbridge High School, Columbia. 20 some odd years that I've been at Rockbridge, and same way. We all still have to work, unlike Tony, but coaching baseball is not really work.
Coach Wilson.
Yeah, Dave Wilson. I've coached at 3 different places. I currently coach at Staley High School in Kansas City. I've also coached at Harrisonville High School when I started my career, and then spent 9 years in Central Missouri at Columbia Hickman High School. So 26 years. I think I'm going on my 26th year.
Coach Laz.
Yeah, Kyle Lasley, Jefferson City High School. This is my 11th season at Jeff City. 3rd as the head coach. I was assistant underneath Brian Ash for 8 years, I guess. So, yep, about it.
Coach Ash. You got to unmute your mic.
I'm a rook. 21st year. I actually, this is where I wish I was still coaching basketball, to be honest with you. That 70-degree weather right now inside the gym sounds pretty good. But originally started off, I wanted to be a college basketball coach. Did coach 3 years at Baker University. So I was in Kansas there for 3 years. Moved back to the area, and I've been in this area for 17-ish, I guess. So this is my 21st year overall head baseball coach at the high school level.
Coach McGee.
Yeah, I'm Scott McGee at Willard High School down in Springfield, Missouri. This is my 14th year here at Willard. I was an assistant at Ozark, which was probably the dominant program there for quite a while in this area. So, and coached with Coach Jason Hauser at Kickapoo, who's also, the Hauser and Essick at Ozark are probably the two biggest names down here other than me. So it's been good to be involved in it, and looking forward to learning from all you guys, because we've got some great coaches here in the room.
And Coach Darby, last but not least.
I'm Dustin Darby. I coach at Lone Jack, just outside of the Kansas City metro area, close to Lee Summit. This is my 7th year at Lone Jack, and this will be my 6th year as the head coach.
And like Bill said, thank you all for agreeing to do this and getting on here and just kind of giving a little preview to not only the baseball season this year, which hopefully we get to have it. It looks like all things will lead to us being able to do that. But then, also maybe with whoever listens to this, give a little bit of insight into kind of what you guys do. And I'm going to start right off here. Coach Towe, I'm going with you. I know your bunt game, it drove us crazy for several years at Jeff City, because that is something that you have always just emphasized, and we always had to be aware of it. We had to change some things defensively to make you not do it. And I'm just kind of curious what convinced you, and what would you say to some coaches listening to this thing, that this is why you have to emphasize it?
Well, I like a lot of things we do as coaches, baseball coaches are some of the best thieves in the world, and Coach Perkins, I know when I was assistant coach watching his teams, their bunt game, same way with Coach McGee. But for us at Rockbridge, you guys know that we play on a massive baseball field, and we probably hit the least amount of home runs as anyone on this screen year in and year out. It's just not something that we're able to do. So, so we have to make sure we, are manufacturing, doing whatever we have to do. So my biggest philosophy is pressure offense. And I think pressure offense comes in a lot of different ways, stealing, delay steals, early breaks, first and thirds. But I think the part that most normal casual fans see more than anything else are your sack bunch, your bunt for base hits. And now we've kind of, I'd say over the last 4 or 5 years, also morphed into slashes as well. But it's just something, for us to get the offense going and putting pressure on opposing defenses. And my philosophy was always, if I put a good bunt down, pitcher and catcher, or catcher, third base, pitcher, third base, first thing they have to do is they have to communicate. So someone has to pick it clean. They've got to get a good exchange. They've got to do good footwork to get a good throw. The first baseman's got to stretch. He's got to catch it. All of those things. There's so many variables defensively that come into play, and all I have to do is put it in a hula hoop area on the first and third base line. So quite honestly, the hitter's job is the easiest of anyone here. And when games are on the line, when bullets are flying 100 mile an hour, and you're dealing with anywhere from 15 to 18-year-old young adults, things can go wrong. We've all been on both sides of that. And so I think it puts a lot of pressure at the right time. For me personally, where I first two things, and I think my philosophy comes, from my love of the 80s Cardinals with Willie McGee and Vince Coleman and all those guys. So I think that's where the foundation started, not knowing. But then Coach McCarter at the University of Missouri, my freshman year, just like we all do, we have a bunt for base hit group. And it was this time of year, right before we were getting ready to kick off the spring season. We're in the indoor, and we were going live, and it was just a bunt for base hit group. So defense knew exactly what we were trying to do, and they still couldn't get us out more times than we could get on first base. And so it's, if you work on it enough, which we do, every day. In fact, we probably bunt as much as we actually take live swings. And I tell my guys, the message is if you can't bunt, it's going to be really hard for you to play. And unless you're breaking windows out in the parking lot of cars, it's going to be really difficult. You have to be able to do that. And case in point, in 2016, my left fielder, leadoff batter, quite honestly, he was a very average hitter. His name was Tatum Lindstedt. And the only reason he was a leadoff batter is because he could run the bases like crazy and he could bunt. He had 21 bunt for base hits that year. And he was actually all state because he could bunt. And And so I just, it's been a big part of what we do, but it's also something that we really focus on too. And it's, I feel like, we've been very successful with it.
That's incredible. I'm just taking notes as we go because I'm the guy in the room that I don't coach baseball, but at the level that you guys do, but I love baseball, played baseball a bunch. And unfortunately, I probably am one of those guys that you all hate because I played baseball. I think I may know something about baseball. In reality, I really don't. Right. I just enjoy the game a lot. So JR's got a bunch of specific questions for you, but I'm going to kind of go off topic and try and get each of you to respond. And growing up in St. Louis, for me, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa, they kind of brought back baseball, right? Based off of the strike and all that kind of stuff. But you got guys like McGwire, Sosa, Clemens, Bonds, not in the Hall of Fame. So for this group of guys, I just kind of want your opinion. And we'll go around the room and start with Coach P first and then move over to Justin and whatnot. And do you think they should be allowed in the Hall of Fame? If you want to give your own personal soapbox, it's perfectly fine by me. You could say, Duke, you're stupid. I don't want to answer the question. That's fine too. But me growing up, I can remember listening or watching every single game that season to see who was going to break that home run record. And I could tell you it brought baseball back. So let's start with Coach P. Those guys deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Should they be there? What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there's guys in the Hall of Fame already that were on it, just so quiet throughout the eras and things. But you're right about McGwire and Sosa. That just regenerated everything. I mean, got me more enthused about baseball. Now everybody's more aware. It's not legal per se, but I think there's guys that are in the Hall of Fame already that were on that kind of stuff.
I would
Coach Towe? Yep.
I would agree. That even though there were rules against it, there weren't really rules against it. And so, how do you penalize guys when they weren't really doing anything that most, as Coach P said, most everyone else is doing? And in the end, guys, as we all know, it's still really difficult to hit a baseball 90 plus mile an hour that consistently over the fence. And I would even go one step further. I'd put Pete Rose in there as well, just for the fact that really it had no impact on his game. But if you want to put him in there and put asterisks, I don't even care about that. Put him in a separate room, doesn't matter. But those guys are super special. I still think I think they should be in.
Coach Wilson?
Well, I would have to agree. And the toughest part is I don't know that I would like it, but I agree they should be able to go in. And probably my biggest concern would be with the records, especially on the home run record with the Bonds, just because he was able to extend his career at a time when Hank Aaron and those guys, weren't doing that. And so for him to put up the numbers he did at the age he was at, I think an asterisk deserved there. But as far as getting in the Hall of Fame, that was what they did in that era. And, all those players are driven to get better. And it was kind of going around. And I agree with what Justin said. There were rules, but there weren't rules. And so they kind of were – that was just part of that time. They still were good players, though. And I agree with Pete Rose. I hope they finally get him in there. It's about what you do on the field. That's what counts.
Very much so. Coach Laz, what do you got?
Got to unmute, Kyle.
I agree with all three of them on the, getting into the Hall of Fame. The bottom line is you still got to go up there and perform. And it's hard to do at that level anyway. So whether or not it was right, it wasn't probably right, but you still got to go out there and play, and to do what they did and the level they did it at, it's pretty big.
Coach Ash?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's, the era that you play in. I mean, you think about the technology right now. Think about the technology these hitters and these players have that they didn't have in the 70s and the 80s. Even though it's not illegal in some regards, I mean, we can get in the whole Houston Astros deal if we want. But, with the communication of pitches. But the technology we have now wasn't available to those guys in the past. So to me, they played within not the rules really, but they played within what everybody else was pretty much doing. And Barry Bonds never tested positive. I mean, he was never caught. That's one thing I think in his favor. So, I agree. I think they all need to be in. They all performed. We know how difficult the sport is, and it was the era they played in. I think they need to be in. I don't care if they have an asterisk. If you want to put an asterisk by their name, go right ahead. But they definitely belong, including Pete Rose.
Agree. Coach McGee.
Yeah, I would agree with all these guys. I think the other thing that they did is they really advanced the training in baseball. If we go back to the 80s and early 90s, there was like this belief that baseball players shouldn't lift weights, especially pitchers should never lift. And then you've got Roger Clemens coming out, in his late 30s, just throwing 95 with a nasty splitter. And I think it kind of advanced everyone's ideas that, hey, being strong matters. Being able to recover well matters. And you look at what baseball players are doing nowadays. They're not using the steroids, but the lessons that they learn from those guys have really improved the game of baseball pretty considerably. So I definitely think they should be in the Hall of Fame.
And Coach Darby.
Justin took the words right out of my mouth. Does it help the end case where they do go yard or something like that? Yeah, of course, but it still doesn't take away the skill set that it takes to, line up a ball and hit it that far, or make those split-second decisions. And like I said, he took the words right out of my mouth with Pete Rose being in the Hall of Fame because, nothing that he did affected the outcome of the game either. So, just to echo what everybody else said, that they all three, whether it's an asterisk or not, deserve to be in. So that's just my take on the whole situation.
If I could add one thing, that I think almost every single one of those players, had they never taken steroids, I still think would have been Hall of Famers without it. They just fell into an era that, that's what went through baseball. And but I still think they were Hall of Fame players. There's no question about it. Hall of Fame talent.
It kind of reminds me a little bit, with all I've got into the cycling over Lance Armstrong. The dude still rode the frickin' tours, and everybody else was on the juice. It just happened to be that time. Coach Duke, you asked the question. What do you think?
I think they absolutely should be in. Somebody mentioned it. It was not illegal at the time, right? There wasn't a rule that you could not do it. It's kind of like we found it and said, well, now we want something to talk about. But quick story about Pete Rose. So they came to St. Louis, and my grandfather was pretty well connected in St. Louis, and he went to the game early, went to batting practice, fielding practice, everything, got Pete Rose's entire team to sign a baseball for me, right? I got one from the Cardinals. I got one without Pete Rose's signature from his team, unfortunately, because he tore his lucky pregame pants in warmups. So he would not do anything else. He was pissed off. He said, I'm not signing any baseball. So I have an entire baseball signed with everybody from his team except for him. I don't think that's enough to keep him out of the Hall because he didn't sign my baseball, but, it's still not – it doesn't make me feel real good. But 3,000 hits, man. I mean, and he was way far past that. 60-something home runs, when you go past Roger Maris, and Maris was getting death threats when he did it because of whose record he was going to break, right? And then you got McGuire and Sosa hitting jacks like crazy. I mean, I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. I don't like Coach said, you want to put him in a different room, go ahead. But I don't think those steroids helped Roger spot his fastball. I don't think it helped him, be as mean as he was. Well, maybe it helped him be mean. I don't know, but it didn't help you swing the bat and hit and center some of those things up. But I go back to McGuire. He hit 49 his rookie year, would have broke 50, but he left to see his kid be born, right? So he would have broke that record, but so he was already hitting them. Did it help? Yeah, it probably helped, but I think they should be in.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
And speaking of, Coach McGee kind of brought it up with the training and how they changed the training. Coach Wilson, I'm going to go to you here because I heard you speak at our clinic a couple years ago on evaluation, and I thought it was really, really good. Some of the things that you were taking into account and kind of were able to teach us, and we changed some things with it. If you're a young coach, you're listening to this, or even if you're a veteran coach and listen to this, the tryout process is about ready to start here in the next couple of weeks. What do you think are like the top 3 things that people should kind of focus on during that evaluation process?
Well, number one, I feel like the tryout process, whether you're at a big school or a small school, is always an important time, because even if you're at a small school and you're going to keep every player, it's an evaluation, and it's the ability to even tell your players that'll be starters on your team the areas they need to improve in. So I think there's a huge importance to it. Being at a school, the last 2 schools that, Staley and then Columbia Hickman, you're going to have a lot of players come out, and in Staley, we're in a metropolitan area. So there's a lot of kids to play baseball. There's a lot of opportunities for them to play. So we usually range anywhere from 95 to 115 kids that'll come out for baseball. So we have to be organized to do it. But I think you talk about the 3 things. I think number one, I think it can even start at the beginning of the year in the fall sports period. And especially when you start in January, your preseason, I think you start looking for 6 tool traits right then. Okay. When you're conditioning, when you're watching them maybe play in a freshman football game or a soccer game or a basketball game, you're getting to see them compete. You're getting to watch them during the preseason and how they act and how they respond to things. So I think it starts a little bit there, and you're really beginning to get feedback from teachers of how they are in the classroom. You're watching them in the hallway. So I think you can start your evaluation there and learning about kids that are interested in baseball. When the actual week starts, it goes right in. I tell our coaches at the very beginning of the week, I don't want to hear about, hey, I really like this kid or he's a good kid. I don't want to hear any of that stuff. In those first 2 days, I want to only measure skills and the measurables. And I want us to eliminate every thought we've ever had about the kid. I don't care if he's bad in the classroom or he's got a behavior issue. Right now, let's evaluate pure skill. Okay? So, and then as the week goes on, if the weather's good and you can get out and do some controlled scrimmage type stuff and situational stuff, then you start focusing on, how they make decisions on the field. And then by the end of the week, we're focusing now on those fringe guys. And then we might start adding in, if players are close, we start adding in, the character stuff to it. And so anyways, a couple things. I jotted a couple notes here. I try to remind my coaches to don't put too much eye time on the players are going to make the team. Because we can fall into that trap. We all fall into that trap where we just watch those top players, and you really need to spend less time watching them during a tryout week and more of the guys in the middle, so you make good decisions. Another thing I tell them is make sure your evaluation is designed to help a kid. That should be important to you, that you create an evaluation process that even if a kid the player doesn't make the team, you've given him an opportunity. You've shown him some things that he can work on in the offseason. Because I'll be quite honest with you, I've had some kids come back after not making it as a freshman and come back to be quality players in my program. Okay, they hit a growth spurt or something like that. So I think you've got to make sure that you give them good feedback so they can improve as a player. And it grows the game too. We all love baseball. We want the game to grow. And the last thing, put the effort into the evaluation that you would want a coach to put into your own children. I have 3 kids, And when I send them, if I were to send them to an evaluation and receive feedback, I would at least want to feel like that coach cared enough that what he put on that paper, he actually saw, he meant, and he was trying to help the player get better. So that's kind of the way I look at tryouts.
Anybody got a really good tryout story they could share?
Yeah, I can interject some stuff. I talked about this in clinic too. And it got to be a point where everybody kept asking me for the form. So we have a website, and I put my evaluation process on my website. Anybody can pull it off of there. You just Google France Howell baseball, you can find that. But, Willie says a lot of great things there. But the thing is, when I got to the bigger school, I coached at Bashir, a smaller school, and I understand small school stuff. But when you get to a bigger school, like we're getting about the same kind of numbers he's getting, you got to evaluate everything and document everything. I mean, we measure everything that we do. I mean, from a 60 to a 40 to, bunting, hitting. And when the radar guns came around, I mean, now you got something that's valid. You got these parents thinking their kids are throwing 88, 89, or they're 72. I mean, that's valid information, and it can show you exactly where that kid is at. And what I do after every day is I'll rank them, on a spreadsheet, and I'll post it so they can see exactly where they're at. And it does a couple things. I mean, it lets them know what they need to improve upon, but also they can see that the guys are better than them in either speed or power or exit velos or whatever, you're measuring that particular day, and the more information you got, less problems you got with parents.
Yep.
Anybody got an opinion on should you radar or not radar somebody right off the bat in tryouts?
Oh, yeah.
Do it.
It's out every day.
So, Coach Perkins, I'll come right back to you here. The St. Louis area, we played a lot of schools down there over the years. All these guys on here, played schools out of St. Louis. It seems like it's loaded. It's not just specifically one school ever. It's just a random hodgepodge. And, you've done amazing things there, had a ton of success, been able to put Francis Howell on the map, keep it on the map, and I'm sure you'll be right back in it again this year. How do you do it?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. First thing is you got to have good players, but second thing is you got to have good baseball assistants, that understand the game, that help you, and you got to rely on them. It is hard. And I'm a guy that schedules all the hardest teams I possibly can. In our conference, if you look around, every team's got at least 2 or 3 guys that are 80 or above. They're almost everybody in the conference got somebody 90 right now. Now, can they throw strikes? That's the question. But it is tough. But you can't take a day off. Every day has got to be high intensity in practice. That's the biggest part of it. I get on in practice, and I always say, practice is mine, game's yours, kind of a thing. So I try to let them experience everything in practice that they would come up in the game. And if that doesn't happen, that's my fault. I'm not doing my job. It's going to get covered the next day in practice if we can get that going. But it is so tough around here. Every time you look around, I'm playing somebody that's doggone good. I didn't know about him. I learned about him real quick when they stick it up my rear end, so it is a tough go. But in the end of the day, it makes us better. I've been to Final Fours with 10, 11 losses, and that doesn't bother me. I don't care. You just got to get hot at the right time in districts and get them weathered and get them tough, and then give it a go.
Just for, to kind of piggyback, Tony's teams are always the toughest nosed kid. They're just hard nosed kids. They play the game so hard. But he doesn't, he never wants to be the person front and center. He's always putting his kids out there first. But the one thing I've always respected about Tony is what he said. He'll go play anywhere at any time against anyone. And I don't know how many times, he's played the morning after proms or whatever else, and he just, that's just what he does. He tries to give all of his kids that experience. And I think, he's not afraid to lose on those games. And because in the, he knows he's going to be there in the end, and it's going to make him tougher for it.
Thanks for that, Coach.
I'd like to jump in and talk a little bit about Tony real quick because I've only played Francis Howell once, I believe it was, but we watched them play in 2013. They won the state title. They had Calvin Munson. They had a loaded team, and we kind of got fortunate. We lost in the semifinal because we might have had our pitcher die in the state championship if we would have won that game. But as I'm watching them that night, the thing that set them apart, Tony had a son that was the starting catcher on that team, and then he had Munson. Those two were the two best players on the field. They were also the two guys that were at the front of the dugout cheering on their teammates at all possible times. They were picking everyone up constantly. You don't see a pitcher and a catcher up at the front of the dugout leading their teammates with just that sort of toughness about them. And we really implemented a lot of things from our program just from me watching the way their dugout behaved. They were so bought into the entire team. And it wasn't their bench guys. It was their main dudes were leading by example by being up there. And I think that is, we've everyone on this screen, I think we've picked up things from each other. That was my first time I'd ever seen Francis Howell play. And I just immediately called my assistants after that game and said, we got to start doing more of this stuff. So just want to jump on and sing his praises a little bit.
Thank you for that. It is a culture. I mean, it comes along. I mean, through the years, like you're talking about some marquee players, but they all learn from guys ahead of them too. And I've been there long enough, and the alumni guys will come back and they'll be hanging around outside the fence. And I'll say, come on out here, man. Let's talk to my guys. Let's tell them what it takes. Brett Graves, who's now, in the bigs, he comes back and talks, and all those guys come back. And it is a culture that, an old assistant coach might brought that up about this culture. And I didn't know what really a culture was. And he started explaining it to me. And I go, you're right. It is. We've created a winning atmosphere, and we expect to win. It doesn't always happen, but we'll work hard enough.
So with that being said, you guys kind of mentioned it with your evals about how you're recording everything. You're looking past who's done what in the past, good, bad, or ugly, indifferent, whatever it may be. And Coach Wilson, I wrote down some notes here on my desk, basically talking about, do they compete? How are they in classroom? What are their character? We'll get to that, but let me measure what I can measure first, right? So about 10 years ago, a movie came out that talked about analytics, Moneyball, right? And it said, we're going to start evaluating everything. We're going to now incorporate that to a greater degree, all the way down into who hits where in the lineup and against who's throwing. How much has that filtered down into the high school level? How important is it to you? Or is it just that was a movie, it was theatrics, don't worry about it. We go out there, and if our dude's better than yours, then we win. So I'm going to start at the bottom of the screen with Coach Darby here, and then work over to Coach McGee. But Coach Darby, what do you think?
I think it's really trickled down even at our, we're class 2. One of my assistants is a math teacher, and everything that he does is very analytical. Everything is a process, and he's looking into the numbers. And a couple of years ago, we had played a team twice that was in our conference and ended up being in our district. And then we went and scouted them a few times, and we knew, based on his number crunching, I can't take credit for it, but we knew 1 through 9 their lineup, how many times they swung at the first pitch, how many times they took the 0-1 pitch or the 1-0 pitch, whatever the case. So my assistant, crunches those numbers, and we can make a scouting report just based off scouting and, seeing those kids before and seeing what they've done in previous games and stuff like that. So, for a class 2 program, I'm lucky to have him, and we can put together really good scouting reports and stuff like that just based off of what we've seen. And then we'll post it in the dugout and things like that, so our pitchers can come in and review that and see who they've got due up and see, what they want to start off with or what they're comfortable with. And then it also helps us align kids. If it's a 7, 8, 9 guy that sprays everything to the right side, we can shade that way and different things like that. So, Moneyball is much more in depth than what we're doing, but we've taken what we can and made the most out of that to fit our program and to help us succeed.
Awesome. Coach McGee?
Yeah, I think one of the things is it's kind of changed the way we all do our lineups. It's no longer a problem to have your best power guys hitting first and second. Some of that stuff has made us rethink some things. When you look at Moneyball and their emphasis on things like walks and stuff like that, I think some of the emphasis area is are different in high school. I think one of the leading premises they found in Moneyball was that RBIs don't matter. In varsity high school baseball, RBIs definitely matter. You've got guys that can, against bad pitching, they can stand up there and draw their walks and hit a few bloop singles. But if you're going to play Columbia Rockbridge in a quarterfinal game, you can't have those kind of guys in the lineup. You've got to have guys who can hit the baseball and drive and run. So, but I do think that it has filtered down into our area of baseball for sure.
Coach Ash?
Sorry. Yeah, and I want to kind of I know we all think we have the best assistant coaches, and I know everybody on this screen thinks that. Like, I truly can say that. Like, there's two of them on here, JR and Kyle. JR was the guy. I mean, we all know his technology and how savvy he is. He did things that I felt like was so far ahead of our time that it's all kind of coming to the surface now, which – looking back, I'm like, wow, we were doing some pretty cool stuff. But a lot of that was dictated on the teams we were playing. The Rockbridges, the Hickmans, the one year we got drummed by Howell in the state championship game. And, we used to play Willard quite a bit early in the year down at their tournament. So I do think it's trickled down. And I want to kind of go back to Tony's, the evaluation piece, the radar gun, because our coaches, Kyle and JR, we've talked about this quite a bit. When you use the radar gun, our expectation is kids need to be in shape, correct? Coming into like tryouts. But we also know we have kids that don't. Like I feel like it was my fault. I potentially lost a kid that could have probably been our number 2 arm in 2017, a kid named Gunner C. He played he didn't play basketball that year, but he's a football kid, and he threw hard. I mean, he was an upper 80s, would touch 90. But he didn't do anything. Like, he didn't do anything in the off season. And I knew that. And although he threw only 8 pitches in the bullpen, like, it did enough. He never pitched for me. It wasn't significant, thank God. But looking back on some of that stuff, like, our responsibility as coaches, I think, is to prevent some of that stuff. So that's where, I think Tony's guys, they're doing everything they can to stay in shape. Like, I know I would have some guys that they wouldn't. They're going to show up on that first day and they're going to try to impress everybody. And they're going to try to, they see that radar gun. It's almost like, wow, let me try to light this thing up. And the next thing you know, 2 weeks down the road, coach, my arm's sore. So I wanted to make sure I touched on that because that was one thing that really stuck with me because we would visit during that season. I'm like, man, I felt like, because before this, I didn't know if Grant Wood was going to be the kind of pitcher that he was going to be in 2017. Thank God he was. But we were really counting on Gunner, and lo and behold, he never pitched. So I did want to touch on that. But as far as the analytics stuff, the kids know it; they see it. With all the social media stuff that we have, guys, if we're not doing some of that stuff, we're fooling ourselves and we're fooling our kids. So you've got to be up to snuff a little bit. I have a Rapsodo hitting machine. I've got a Rapsodo pitching machine. I'm just dangerous enough with it. I'm nowhere where JR could take that stuff and like he could create something else completely out of it. So, but I think you got to do some of that stuff, but I think the one thing that we lose touch of sometimes is that one kid watching him play a game and the things they can do that just can't be measured all the time. And I think sometimes we get lost in that sometimes. So it's nice to have. I think we got to use it, but to me personally, it's not something I just put a whole lot of stock in. Like as much as I would watching a kid play the game, you can't appreciate some of those kids until you see them actually play the game. They're not going to throw hard. They're not going to be very fast, but their instincts are going to be there when they start playing. So that's just my 2 cents.
Love it. Coach Laz, what do you got?
Yeah, so I'm kind of in the same boat. We actually have JR is the technology guru. I'm pretty sure he figured out a way to hack into Game Changer at one point a couple years ago, but we won't talk about that. But moving forward, I mean, the guys like to see numbers. So, we post a lot of numbers. We have a Rapsodo. I think 3 years ago when I joined the ABCA is when I kind of started getting more into the analytics and the data. And since then, I've tried to incorporate that stuff to where I'm not overusing it to where the kids and myself even don't understand it. But we're actually gathering information that will help us, help practices, help games. And, after I actually bought Rapsodo last year, still trying to work with that. We've done some pretty cool stuff in the off season with it, and even towards the beginning part of the tryouts and first part of last year before we kind of got canceled with COVID. So, but other than that, I mean, it's just like I said, I try not to dig too deep into it. Try to keep it as simple as possible for the guys.
Awesome. Coach Wilson.
Yeah, I kind of agree with what Kyle just said. I mean, we use some of it, but I think the biggest thing's really explaining to your kids like the certain measurables that you get, how they actually apply on the field. And I know that was big even for my son who's pitching in college now, just understanding about spin rate, and that the reason it's good to have that is to give that hitter an illusion of the ball rising, and just trying to tell them certain things about things that are measured and how it applies on the field. But I try not to dive too much into it, because they can get too focused on video and too focused on things, and I think it takes away from their play sometimes. But yeah, I do think you have to be up to date in this day and age.
I got one thing to add. I probably have used it more recently for college coaches. They've asked more about, I had a coach I was talking to a couple of weeks ago about a kid, and he's wanting to know, bat exit speeds, launch angles, and, he's a big technology guy. So I've probably used it and tried to dig a little bit deeper into what I'm trying to, what we're doing, just to give those guys the right information they need to get my players, an opportunity.
Makes sense. Coach Towe, what about you?
Well, I think when we're talking about information, there's two types of buy-ins, right? So there's the buy-in within your kids in the program internally, but themselves, or I'd say maybe individually, and then there's also buy-in for the team when you're playing a game. Two examples. So I'm a huge information guy. I want all the information I can get from my opponents because we feel like if I have enough information, then I can make a game plan. We're big on game plans, and we need those game plans to be able to execute to give ourselves a chance to win. Two examples. First one, in 19 district championship game against Hickman, their 3-hole hitter, his name was Ashton. He was, it was just almost by the book where he was hitting the baseball. So he came up his first time. My second baseman's almost playing behind second base. The entire 4-hole is open. There's nobody there. And twice that game, he hit 1 hoppers right to my second baseman. That would have potentially changed the outcome of that game. So you get buy-in that way from your kids because they come off the field going, holy, Coach, how did you know that stuff? And so now they're buying anything you sell at that point in time when it comes with that. The other piece of that is, and we also have a Rapsodo. So what we've found is, these kids go all of these places and they're trying to throw the ball, through the wall as hard as they can, but they're not learning how to pitch sometimes. Very few guys that they're going and actually teaching how to pitch. I don't have 90-mile-an-hour guys anymore, so we have to know how to pitch. So we'll have guys start throwing their set on the Rapsodo, and there'll be a, whatever arm speed. And then we show them that it's instant feedback, right? Then we start tweaking mechanics, and we're finding that we're jumping kids between 2 and 5 mile an hour just by correcting mechanics. Again, using that information, quick buy-in. Now, again, they're completely bought in with what you're selling. So I think all of that information is so good. I think there's a lot of different types, and I agree with all of you guys. We have to be doing that. And I think if you're going to win at a high level, you can't have too much information. Now, you may not give it all to your kids, but as coaches, we need to know every possible thing we can have.
Awesome stuff. Coach P, what do you got?
I don't have a rap soda. You guys are killing me. You're gonna make me go out and I have to go buy one now. I don't know if I get that kind of money, but I've been around it a lot. I mean, I work showcases in summertime. I'm around it quite a bit, and I really agree with all the spin rates and launch angles and stuff like that. But you know, most of my high school kids, we can start talking about launch angle. I think that's just silly for the most part. I mean, I may have one guy on my team that I think can consistently hit home runs, but now everybody wants to teach a launch angle and hit home runs, I'm going to spend most of my time like Towe working on my bunting game, because that's from to win more games with more bunting than I am with home runs, because that's, I got a big yard too. And it's tough. I mean, the analytics stuff is great. I just got to drum up some money now. All you guys got, I got to keep up.
Along those lines too, I love the pitching Rapsodo because of instant feedback with mechanics. So I think pitchers with average velocity can still get outs. But I'm not a big fan of that hitting wise, because as Tony said, all you're doing is hitting fly balls to outfielders. Right. And so I think my job as an offensive coach is to give my kids all the tools to be successful in their high school career, so they are able to go play in the college level. And then once you get to the college level, let those guys change your launch angles and things like that. But it's our job to have them enough success to be able to get there in the first place. And I really feel, I've had some great hitters, and I've even told them, I know when you get on college campus, they're going to change you, but we can't afford to do that, because if you don't hit well, the team's going to suffer. So, again, I just think there's so many different pieces that are valuable, and some that, they're okay.
But where are you seeing most of the velocity stuff from pitching now? Like what I'm seeing is it's all the run and gun stuff. That's where I'm seeing the radar gun. Like, and Justin, I think you posted something the other day or commented, and I agree 100%. It's until the powers that be change the game and the pitcher's able to run up to the mound and throw a ball. Like, why? I get the sequencing and getting your body to work together with your lower half and upper half. I get all that. But when I see velocity stuff, it's almost, it's probably 80 to 90%. It's all run and gun stuff, which goes back to how much pitching are we teaching? If you can take the mechanics stuff like Justin's doing and have that 4 mile an hour, 5 mile an hour spike just off mechanics. And now that kid, because to me, our magic number, JR and Kyle and I, we'd always discuss the magic number in high school is 85. That's my opinion. Like, I think 85 miles an hour is the magic number. Mm-hmm. If you can get a kid there that can pitch, you're going to win a lot of games. So taking a kid from 79 to 85, I think is a lot easier. I think it's probably a little bit more attainable than a kid that's, 85 and trying to get them up to like in the, the mid 90s. I know Scott's had those guys. I know Tony's had them. I know Justin's had them. Dave, everybody here has had them. Kyle's got one. But I think that I get really concerned with all that velocity stuff when you just see, and it's not really Rapsodo. It's just the radar gun. It's just the run and gun stuff. And I'm just kind of like, again, it bothers me at times. I just kind of move on and like, whatever, that's one thing I've never done. We do the weighted ball stuff. I feel like for our guys, it seems like it's worked. It's more of an arm care injury prevention. We do that stuff with the weighted ball, but I've never, ever have taken a ball and we ran and thrown into a net. But I don't want to put my kid in a situation where they just blow their arm up. To me, that just seems like it would be detrimental, but kids do it. And I know people want to see it. So that's my take on it.
I was fortunate here in Kansas City. They've done this deal on Saturdays down at the Royals Academy. It's like coffee with coaches. And so they'll bring, people in where you can go down and listen to them. And I was even listening to one of the Royals, Kansas City Royals hitting coaches. And he was talking about, every kid's got a throw coach and every kid's got a hitting coach. And it comes down to you have to be careful with how much you do of it, because kids are starting to think that if I just improve these numbers, I'm automatically going to know how to play the game. Like that's where my success is going to come from. And it was refreshing to hear him talk about you guys are the ones teaching them how to pitch. You're actually at their games and you're teaching them how to hit. You're teaching them how to pitch. And he actually said he understands how tough it's getting because they're getting so locked into these numbers, these launch angle numbers and all the things they can get from the technology, that they're kind of thinking, if I just get better at this, raise this number, I'm going to get good. And we've all seen it with our pitchers. Some of them don't throw strikes and they don't know how to pitch. And they may look great on that Twitter feed, but they got to learn to do it in the game. They got to be able to perform. And so, yeah, I think you do have to have some of it. You've got to stay in the current times to get the kid to listen to you, to buy in. But, man, you know, fortunate here, the guys on this screen right here are guys that teach the game well. And so their players are fortunate.
I'd be curious, you know, with all of you guys here, and it's kind of a little bit of a tangent, but Tony mentioned some of it a minute ago talking about culture. How many of you guys, but I think this all kind of plays in because as high school coaches, our hardest job seems that over time, over the last 5 years is getting all of our kids to buy into high school as opposed to what they're doing in the summertime, right? And you know, and there's nothing in the paper on the summertime, but, you know, and I think Dave said it years ago, and it's something that's always stuck with me. There's only two people that get losses in the springtime, the starting pitcher and the head coach. And the head coach gets every single one of them. And so I'd be curious to know how many of you guys are having issues right now that when we lost that season last year, you lost your culture. Because I'm coming into a season where I don't have one kid who's ever played varsity baseball. Because I had such a big senior class where I would have had last year. And so now my seniors have never been through a varsity spring of any sort, practice, playing, really not even JV piece of that. And so I'm finding that I'm having to completely rework and start all over my culture because they just don't know it. So I'm kind of curious if any of you guys are seeing some of the same things.
Well, I can talk to that a little bit. I coach in the summertime with prospects too. And when we talk about culture, it is very, very different. I mean, the club teams, it's all about themselves and they're all trying to market themselves. It's just a me attitude. The high school scene, that's especially with the seniors, like you were talking about here earlier, but the seniors, that's their last go around together. You know, everybody's going to go this way, that way. Some kids will play, some kids won't play. And you got to impress upon them, this is your last chance, man. Let's get after it. Let's make something to remember and do that. The summer stuff, I mean, it is. It's just a me thing, you know. I mean, I know that our pitchers come in, throw. We might be there, you know, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you know, something like that. They'll come in, throw their game on Thursday, won't see them again. You know, there's no team concept there, you know. It happens every day. They just roll in for one day and they're gone. You know, that's just the way it works these days, you know, and they're getting those numbers, the stats and that kind of stuff, you know, off of the Rapsodo and everything else. You go down to Atlanta, MPs is up there every pitch, you know, every kid's looking over his shoulder, checking out his numbers and you're just trying to pop a number down there. I don't know. I'm not really caught up in this number thing as much, but it is valid. It is important.
I feel like our culture's taken a little bit of hit, and I've talked to Justin and Brian about it. Just from the standpoint of, you know, you built all that up last preseason, and then the plug was pulled on the whole season, and so you basically lost your kids for several months. Okay, and so coming back this year, it has been tougher, and I have a lot of seniors this year, and but it's also harder because of the hybrid schedule that we're going through. You know, they're not spending every day in the school together and just being able to talk ball and be around their teammates. And so, yeah, it's probably been harder on me more than anything. Just trying to reel it back in, and because that's so much of why I love to coach, is to be around them all the time and to build that team. That's why I wanted to do it. And so it has been tougher. We're seeing some small steps forward. But yeah, the kids are in our program, and I'm sure Tony deals with this in metropolitan area. They're so spread out in the summertime. They don't play together. And so when you lose a whole season and they all play on different teams, it's taking a hit a little bit. I have to be honest.
I think for us, we haven't lost that much of a culture. That's one good thing about being a small school is last year we had one senior, and so we're returning, 7 starters, I think, this year. But I think the thing that has really made our culture take a hit this year was, like Dave said, was, not being in school. But for us being a part of Jackson County and Kansas City, we can't have any open gyms. We can't have any off-season stuff. So, trying to get your pitchers ready, healthy and in shape and everything, like that's kind of the biggest detriment to us and the biggest question mark to us is because, most of our kids are dual sport kids, which most of your kids are too. But at the same time, we can't even bring them in to get them any type of work in just because we have no access to any school buildings to, bring them in and get them help. So that's one thing that's kind of, put our culture down a little bit because they're not spending time with each other and, we don't have an opportunity to bring them all together beforehand.
I'm kind of in the same boat, Coach Darby. I got 13 seniors, and it's a really, really tight group. And our culture it restarted back in, kind of the summertime when our strength and conditioning coach got them back in the weight room. And he does just an amazing job with those guys. And they've been just biting and just ready to get back after it. And they've stuck together. They played with each other this summer. We played, in the summer league, and our guys are just the culture right now for us has been pretty good. Just moving forward. So